It is the 8th of December, 1978. The early winter darkness has already fallen over Arlington, Virginia, blanketing the quiet suburban streets in a cold, heavy stillness. The festive lights strung between street lamps cast long, distorted shadows, offering a cheerful facade to a nation wrestling with unease. The optimism of the post-war era has curdled into the cynicism of the late 70s. The wounds of Vietnam are still fresh, the specter of Watergate still haunts the halls of power, and the Cold War, once a stark conflict of black and white, has devolved into a grimy, unending twilight struggle fought in the shadows. On this particular evening, an FBI special agent named Michael Reeves is driving his car, not with the easy rhythm of a man heading home, but with the coiled tension of a hunter. He's off duty, a fact that means nothing to the obsession that has consumed him for months. His route is deliberately irregular, a practiced technique to avoid establishing a pattern, but his destination is always the same. He turns onto a quiet commercial street, his gaze fixed on a single storefront across the way, Literarium Books. It's a quaint, unassuming place, the kind of small, independent bookshop that feels like a relic from a gentler time. Its windows display classic novels and advertise local author events, a picture of quiet intellectual community life. But Reeves isn't looking at the books. His eyes are locked on a single object in the window display. There, positioned on the right side, nestled amongst a display of holiday-themed poetry, sits a Coca-Cola bottle. It is filled about halfway with its dark liquid, the iconic red and white label angled slightly toward the street. To any other passerby, it is nothing more than litter, a forgotten refreshment left behind by the shop owner. But to Michael Reeves, it is a scream in the silence. He pulls his car to the curb half a block away, kills the engine, and watches. His hands grip the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Because he has seen this exact bottle, in this exact position, once before, and its appearance tonight is not a coincidence. It cannot be. In the silent coded language of espionage, this simple consumer product is a declaration. It is a signal, a trigger, a weapon. It means a secret is ready to be passed. It means a betrayal is in motion. This bottle, a potent symbol of American capitalism and culture, was speaking a language the Federal Bureau of Investigation had been desperately trying to decipher. It was a key to unlocking a conspiracy that reached from this sleepy Virginia street directly into the heart of the Pentagon. The story of this bottle is more than a clever tale of spycraft. It is a stark illustration of a fundamental truth about the nature of modern conflict. It proves a thesis that remains terrifyingly relevant today, that in the war for information, the most devastating threats are not the ones that announce themselves with explosions and fanfare, but the ones that hide in plain sight, cloaked in the comforting disguise of the mundane. The capture of the spy ring connected to this bookshop was not the result of a single lucky break or a dramatic confrontation. It was the inevitable culmination of a chain reaction, a series of falling dominoes set in motion by one agent's refusal to dismiss an anomaly, his relentless belief that in the world of counterintelligence, there is no such thing as a coincidence. This is the story of how the patient, methodical dissection of the ordinary uncovered the truly extraordinary, and how the quietest whisper of suspicion, when pursued with unwavering discipline, can expose a universe of treason. The late 1970s was a period of profound paranoia in the United States. The Cold War had entered a new, more insidious phase. The grand ideological struggle had fractured into 1,000 tiny proxy wars, fought not just on battlefields in distant lands, but in the back alleys of European capitals, in the quiet suburbs of Washington, D.C., and in the nascent digital realm of computer systems. The enemy was no longer a monolithic entity with a clear face. It was a ghost, a presence felt but rarely seen. Soviet intelligence, particularly the KGB and its military counterpart, the GRU, had become masters of a new kind of warfare. They sought not to conquer America with tanks and missiles, but to hollow it out from within, to bleed it of its secrets, its technological advantages, and its self-confidence, one stolen document at a time. For the FBI's counterintelligence division, this was the era of chasing shadows. The enemy they hunted did not wear a uniform. He looked, spoke, and acted just like any other American. He could be a neighbor, a colleague, a friendly shopkeeper. The KGB's doctrine of deep cover meant that agents could be embedded in American society for years, even decades, living utterly unremarkable lives until they were activated. They were sleeper cells, patient and disciplined, waiting for the call. And alongside these trained professionals were the insiders, the Americans who, for reasons of ideology, greed, blackmail, or ego, chose to betray their country. These were the true prizes for Moscow Center, the holy grail of espionage, a source with legitimate access to the nation's most sensitive secrets. By 1976, the FBI knew it had a serious problem. A steady stream of highly classified American defense documents was somehow making its way into the hands of the Soviet Union and its Eastern Bloc allies. This wasn't low-level chatter. It was the crown jewels. Technical specifications for next-generation satellite communication systems, the very eyes and ears of American global surveillance. Internal Pentagon assessments of weapons procurement programs, revealing not just what America was building, but how it thought about its own strengths and weaknesses. Organizational charts detailing which military officers held the highest security clearances, providing the KGB with a roadmap of who to target next. This intelligence was catastrophic. It allowed Soviet military planners to understand American capabilities with terrifying precision. If they knew the frequencies and encryption methods of U.S. satellites, they could jam them or intercept their signals during a crisis. If they understood the vulnerabilities in a new missile system, they could develop countermeasures before it was even deployed. Each stolen document was a brick in the wall of Soviet defense, built with American materials. The hemorrhaging of this information was a direct threat to the strategic balance of power that kept the nuclear peace, however precariously. In response, the FBI's Washington field office launched a top-priority counterintelligence investigation, giving it the codename Operation Quiet Pastor. The name itself was evocative, suggesting a search for a malevolent presence hiding within a trusted flock. A small, dedicated team of 6 agents was assigned the Herculean task of finding the leak. For 2 years, they found nothing. Less than nothing. They were fighting an enemy who had perfected the art of invisibility. They ran all the standard protocols. They scrutinized the financial records of thousands of federal employees with security clearances, looking for suspicious cash deposits or unexplained wealth. They monitored foreign contacts, listening for the faint signal of a clandestine relationship. They conducted painstaking surveillance on Soviet bloc diplomats known to be intelligence officers, hoping to catch them meeting a source. The result was a deafening silence. The spy ring they were hunting was a phantom. It had established a system so clean, so meticulously compartmented, that it left no discernible trace. The agents on Operation Quiet Pastor began to feel the corrosive effects of a long, fruitless search. They were chasing ghosts, fighting a war against an enemy they couldn't see, and the gnawing possibility began to grow that perhaps there was no spy ring at all. Perhaps the intelligence leaks were unrelated, a series of isolated security breaches rather than a coordinated operation. The case was growing cold, and with it, the morale of the team. Then, in the sweltering heat of August 1978, a crack appeared in the wall of silence. A CIA source, an individual so valuable and sensitive that their identity remains a closely guarded secret to this day, provided a sliver of information to their handler during a clandestine meeting in a European capital. The source, deep within the machinery of a Warsaw Pact intelligence service, claimed knowledge of a Soviet network operating in the Washington area. They didn't know names, locations, or targets, but they knew one bizarre, almost laughable detail about the network's tradecraft. They used commercial products as signals. Specifically, they used Coca-Cola bottles. When the CIA relayed this intelligence to the FBI, the reaction within the Operation Quiet Pastor team was a mixture of elation and despair. It was the first tangible lead they had received in over 2 years, the first concrete detail about how the enemy operated. But it was also maddeningly, impossibly vague. The source didn't know what the signal meant. Was a full bottle a signal? An empty one? Did it have to be placed in a specific way? Upside down? On its side? All they knew was that somewhere in the vast, sprawling Washington metropolitan area, a bottle of Coke could mean more than just a refreshing drink. It could mean a secret was about to change hands. The FBI was now faced with a problem of astronomical scale. In 1978, Coca-Cola was not just a brand. It was an omnipresent feature of the American landscape. Its distinctive glass bottles were everywhere, in grocery stores, on office desks, in vending machines, rolling in gutters, piled high in trash cans. Searching for the one signal bottle among the millions of ordinary discarded ones seemed like a fool's errand, a task so hopeless it bordered on the absurd. Yet, it was all they had. The hunt for the ghost had a new, strange focus. The FBI was no longer just looking for a spy. They were now looking for a bottle of Coke. And for Agent Michael Reeves, that hunt was about to become a personal crusade. The popular imagination, fueled by decades of fiction and film, has a very specific image of the spy. He is a figure of action and glamour, a globe-trotting connoisseur of fine suits, fast cars, and clever gadgets. He is James Bond, engaging in high-stakes poker games in Montenegro and ski slope shootouts in the Alps. This is the myth of espionage, a world of overt, dramatic conflict, where the lines between hero and villain are clear, and the work is anything but boring. The reality, especially for the counterintelligence officers tasked with catching spies, is a world away from this fantasy. It is a slow, grinding, and often mind-numbingly tedious profession. It is a profession built not on glamour, but on patience. The real war of spies is not fought with silenced pistols and exploding pens. It is fought with file folders, with surveillance logs, with endless hours spent watching and waiting, with the painstaking analysis of 1,000 tiny, seemingly meaningless details in the search for a single, significant pattern. The myth is that spies stand out. The truth is that the most dangerous ones are masters of blending in. They weaponize the mundane. Their greatest strength is their ability to be utterly, comprehensively forgettable. To understand the challenge facing Operation Quiet Pastor, we must first understand the world in which it operated. The late 1970s was a period of introspection and crisis for American intelligence. The CIA and FBI were still reeling from the public revelations of the Church Committee hearings, which had exposed decades of illegal surveillance, covert operations, and abuses of power. This led to new restrictions, increased oversight, and a pervasive sense of institutional caution. Morale was low, and the agencies felt besieged, not just by foreign adversaries, but by domestic critics. This time of troubles for the American intelligence community was seen as a golden opportunity by their Soviet counterparts. The KGB, under the shrewd and ruthless leadership of Yuri Andropov, launched an aggressive global campaign of intelligence gathering and active measures. They saw an America weakened by internal division and self-doubt, and they pressed their advantage relentlessly. The term "decade of the spy" is often used to describe the 1970s, a period marked by a series of high-profile espionage cases that revealed just how deeply Soviet intelligence had penetrated the Western establishment. Cases like the Walker spy ring in the Navy, which compromised naval communications for years, or the treachery of CIA officers like Philip Agee, who exposed the identities of covert agents around the world, had a chilling effect. They demonstrated that the threat was not just external, it was internal. The call was coming from inside the house. This was the environment in which Operation Quiet Pastor was born. The problem wasn't just that secrets were being stolen, it was the kind of secrets. The documents appearing in Soviet hands were not random. They pointed to a source, or sources, with access to highly compartmented programs within the Department of Defense. This suggested a sophisticated targeting operation by the KGB or GRU. They weren't just fishing for whatever they could get. They had a shopping list. They were systematically mapping America's technological and military nervous system. For example, stealing the technical specifications of a satellite communication system was about more than just technology. It was about understanding the command and control capabilities of the United States. Could the president communicate securely with nuclear submarine commanders in a crisis? Could bomber fleets receive updated targeting information in real time? By compromising these systems, the Soviets could potentially blind and deafen the American military at the most critical moment imaginable. Similarly, intelligence on weapons procurement wasn't just about blueprints. It revealed budgets, production timetables, testing vulnerabilities, and strategic priorities. It allowed Soviet analysts to predict America's military posture 5, 10, even 15 years into the future, and to allocate their own resources to counter it effectively. This was not espionage. It was strategic warfare conducted by other means. The spy ring responsible for these leaks was the FBI's antagonist, but it was an antagonist without a face. Its defining characteristic was its professionalism. Soviet tradecraft, honed over decades of clandestine operations, was built on a foundation of paranoia and discipline. The core principle was compartmentalization. The right hand must never know what the left hand is doing. The source who stole the documents would likely have no contact with the courier who picked them up. The courier, in turn, would know nothing about the intelligence officer who handled them. Each link in the chain was kept ignorant of the others. A communication system using signals and dead drops ensured that no two individuals ever had to meet directly. If one link was compromised, the others would remain secure. This was the clean, efficient, and maddeningly effective system that Operation Quiet Pastor was up against. It was an operational masterpiece of clandestine design, leaving no financial trail, no phone records, no witnesses to a meeting that never happened. For 2 years, the FBI agents felt like they were punching at smoke. Then came the tip about the Coca-Cola bottle. On its face, it was a breakthrough. But in practice, it presented a nightmarish logistical problem. The FBI couldn't simply put out an all-points bulletin for suspicious Coca-Cola bottles. Doing so would instantly alert the network that their signaling method had been compromised. They would simply change it, and the FBI would be back to square one, having burned their only lead. The investigation had to remain covert. So, they did the only thing they could. They expanded their visual surveillance, focusing on what they deemed high-probability areas. These were commercial districts and neighborhoods near the Pentagon, or suburbs with high concentrations of defense employees. And agents were trained to look for bottles placed in unusual, deliberate ways. On a fence post, at the base of a specific tree, on a windowsill. The effort quickly descended into a kind of surreal madness. Agents spent weeks staring at garbage, trying to divine intent from discarded trash. Was that Coke bottle on the bus stop bench a signal, or was it just left there by a thirsty commuter? Was the bottle in the library book drop a message, or had a student simply finished their drink? The city was swimming in Coca-Cola bottles. Each one was a potential clue, and each one was almost certainly a red herring. The sheer number of false positives was overwhelming. After weeks of this fruitless search, with no results and mounting frustration, the leadership at the Washington field office began to lose faith. The CIA's intelligence was second-hand. Perhaps the source was mistaken. Perhaps the FBI was misinterpreting the clue. The expanded surveillance was quietly scaled back, and Operation Quiet Pastor returned to its state of suspended animation. Still open, still a priority, but with no clear path forward. The ghost remained a ghost. The system remained unbroken. The myth of the invisible spy seemed, for all intents and purposes, to be the reality. The stage was set for a turning point, but it wouldn't come from a grand strategic plan. It would come from the stubborn observation of a single man during what was supposed to be a quiet evening out. The history of investigation, whether of a crime, a scientific mystery, or an act of espionage, is often punctuated by moments of serendipity. An apple falls on Newton's head. Fleming notices mold contaminating a petri dish. But these are not mere accidents. They are moments when a prepared mind, a mind already saturated with a problem, encounters a piece of information that suddenly connects all the disparate dots. On the evening of October 12, 1978, Special Agent Michael Reeves's mind was just such a prepared instrument. Reeves was not a flashy agent. He was 34 years old, a 12-year veteran of the Bureau who had cut his teeth on bank robberies and organized crime cases before finding his true calling in the meticulous cerebral world of counterintelligence. He was, by nature and by training, a pattern recognizer. Where others saw chaos, he looked for structure. Where others saw coincidence, he looked for causality. He was the kind of investigator who kept voluminous notes, who would revisit old case files and photographs months later, believing that a fresh look might reveal something previously missed. The 2 fruitless years of Operation Quiet Pastor had not discouraged him. They had sharpened his focus. The case had become more than an assignment. It was an obsession that occupied his thoughts long after he left the office. That evening, he and his wife, Abigail, had dinner reservations at a small Italian restaurant called Angelo's in their Arlington neighborhood. It was meant to be a break from the case, a moment of normalcy in a life consumed by the abnormal. Arlington itself was a curious blend of sleepy suburbia and the nerve center of national security. Tree-lined streets and locally owned businesses masked the fact that it was home to the Pentagon and a significant portion of the nation's defense and intelligence workforce. Secrets were a local commodity, woven into the fabric of daily life. The hostess seated Michael and Abigail at a table near the front window, offering a clear view of the street outside. As Abigail looked over the menu, Reeves' gaze drifted across the street. His eyes fell on a small bookstore, Literarium Books. It was the epitome of ordinary, with hand-lettered signs in the window and shelves groaning with used paperbacks. But then he saw it. It wasn't a book that caught his attention. It was a Coca-Cola bottle. It was sitting in the window display on the right side, filled about halfway with liquid. Its placement seemed too neat, too deliberate to be accidental. It was standing perfectly upright, arranged among the books as if it were part of the display. In that instant, for Michael Reeves, the comfortable ambiance of the Italian restaurant dissolved. The clatter of silverware and the hum of conversation faded into the background. His mind raced back to the CIA intelligence report from August. A Soviet intelligence network used commercial products as signal devices, specifically Coca-Cola bottles. He watched the shop owner, a nondescript middle-aged man in a cardigan sweater, move about inside, preparing to close for the night. The man pulled down the front shade and locked the door, but the Coca-Cola bottle remained, visible through the window, catching the glow of the streetlights. A cascade of thoughts, observations, and deductions flooded Reeves's mind. The placement seemed intentional, not forgotten. The timing was significant, placed just before closing, as if intended for someone to see it after hours. It was a communication meant to be read in the darkness. That peculiar sensation that every seasoned investigator knows washed over him, the moment a random, trivial detail snaps into focus and feels profoundly important. It was the feeling of a key turning in a lock. Throughout the meal, his dinner with his wife forgotten, he kept glancing across the street, his eyes returning again and again to that solitary bottle. It was probably nothing. The owner was probably just thirsty and forgot his drink. It was a coincidence, But Reeves had spent 2 years staring into an empty void, and his professional instinct, the finely honed intuition that separated good agents from great ones, told him this was different. This was the anomaly he had been searching for. He didn't sleep that night. The image of the bottle was burned into his mind. At 6:45 the next morning, long before the bookshop was due to open, he drove his car slowly down the quiet street. The city was just beginning to stir. He slowed as he approached literarium books, his heart pounding. He looked at the front window. The display of books was exactly as it had been the night before. The hand-lettered signs were unchanged, but the Coca-Cola bottle was gone. This was the moment the first crucial domino fell. Its appearance had been suspicious. Its disappearance was confirmation. This wasn't just a misplaced object. It was part of a process, a cycle. A signal placed, a message received, and the signal removed. The system was active. Reeves drove directly to the Washington field office and went to his supervisor, Special Agent in Charge Robert Hensley. Hensley was a career investigator, a man whose professional skepticism was a necessary shield against the thousands of false leads and wild theories that came across his desk. He listened patiently to Reeves' account. He acknowledged it was interesting, but he immediately offered a dozen mundane explanations. The owner could have cleaned the window that morning. A cleaning crew could have tossed it. It could be utterly meaningless. But Reeves, emboldened by the certainty of his conviction, pressed his point. He emphasized the timing. It appeared just before closing. It was gone before opening. That wasn't random. It was a schedule. It fit the profile of a clandestine signal perfectly. Place the indicator when the package is ready for collection. Remove it once the pickup is confirmed. His persistence paid off. Hensley, perhaps sensing the obsessive conviction in his agent's voice, authorized a limited surveillance. 2 agents would pose as a couple having dinner at Angelo's that evening. If the bottle appeared again, they would watch what happened. If it didn't, the inquiry would be dropped. That night, October 13th, the undercover agents settled in at their corner table, eyes fixed on literarium books. The evening passed with excruciating normalcy. The owner sold some books, shelved others, and at 7:00 he locked up and went home. No Coca-Cola bottle appeared. For the next week, the FBI maintained sporadic surveillance. The result was the same each night. Nothing. By October 20th, Hensley called it off. The resources couldn't be justified, the promising lead had evaporated. For any other agent, that might have been the end of it. It was a good hunch that just didn't pan out. But Michael Reeves couldn't let it go. The image of that bottle, the clean efficiency of its appearance and disappearance, haunted him. He trusted his instincts. He knew he had seen something real. So, he began his own surveillance, unofficial and on his own time. He made it part of his daily routine, driving past the bookshop at odd hours in the morning, during his lunch break, late at night. He varied his route, his timing, ever the professional, avoiding any pattern that could be spotted. Weeks turned into a month. November arrived, bringing a chill to the air. The bookshop continued its quiet, unremarkable existence. Reeves saw nothing. The doubt began to creep in. Maybe Hensley was right. Maybe it was just a strange coincidence. And then, on the evening of December 8th, nearly 2 months after his initial observation, it happened again. As Reeves drove past the closed and darkened shop, he saw it. There, in the front window, in the exact same spot, angled in the exact same way, was a half-filled Coca-Cola bottle. It was back. It was real. This was the turning point. This was the moment that a lone agent's obsession was transformed into the full-fledged power of a federal investigation. This was the inciting incident that would shatter the invisible shield of the spy ring and set in motion the chain of events that would lead to its downfall. The hunt was on. The reappearance of the Coca-Cola bottle on December 8th was Michael Reeves's vindication. He immediately called the FBI duty officer, and by 10:30 that night, his supervisor, Robert Hensley, no longer a skeptic, had mobilized a full surveillance team. The initial attempt, however, exposed their tactical vulnerabilities. Two agents in an unmarked car down the block had an imperfect view and, crucially, no visibility of the rear of the building. At 4:57 in the morning, they watched through binoculars as the bottle was removed from the window by someone inside the darkened shop. But they never saw anyone enter or exit the front. They had confirmed the signal was real, but in doing so, they learned that the operation was more sophisticated than they imagined. The perpetrators were using a rear entrance, a blind spot. This is where the true, methodical work of counter-espionage began. The myth of the lone wolf agent making a dramatic arrest gave way to the reality of a disciplined team executing a complex plan. The solution came from Special Agent Sarah Mitchell, a surveillance specialist who proposed a stroke of operational genius. She had identified a vacant second-floor apartment directly across the street from Literarium Books. Within 48 hours, the FBI, using a shell corporation, had leased the apartment. It became their clandestine observation post. By December 12th, it was a state-of-the-art surveillance hub, staffed 24 hours a day by rotating teams of agents. They had cameras with long lenses, night vision equipment, and meticulous logs to document every person who entered or exited the bookstore. Their mission was no longer just to watch, but to conduct a forensic autopsy of the life of this seemingly ordinary business. From their perch, they watched the daily rhythm of the shop. They identified the owner, Ernest Caldwell, a 63-year-old retired teacher. They ran a deep background check on him and found nothing. No foreign travel, no unexplained wealth, no suspicious contacts. He was a ghost, a perfect cutout. He appeared to be nothing more than a man living out a quiet retirement. The surveillance continued through the Christmas season. The agents documented every customer, cross-referencing their faces against databases of known foreign intelligence officers, but found no matches. The network remained dormant. Then, on January 3, 1979, the signal appeared again. The team in the observation post snapped into action, the quiet hum of the apartment replaced by the focused energy of a command center. They photographed the bottle, logged the time, and settled in for the long wait. The dominoes began to fall, just as they had hypothesized, but this time, they could see the entire sequence. At 4:30 in the morning, a dark sedan performed a slow pass down the street, a classic counter-surveillance sanity check to see if anything was out of place. 10 minutes later, a male figure entered the alley behind the bookstore. A few minutes after that, a dim light flickered on in the back of the shop, and the Coca-Cola bottle vanished from the window. Less than a minute later, the figure emerged from the alley, now carrying a small paper bag. The exchange was complete. The agents photographed the figure, but the darkness and distance made identification impossible. Hensley had given clear orders. Do not compromise the observation post. Following the courier was a tempting option, but it risked spooking the entire network. They might catch a foot soldier, but the generals would escape. The real prize wasn't the courier, it was the source. The twist in the investigation, the truth that ran opposite to the myth of simply catching the spy red-handed, was this strategic realization. They had to shift their focus from the pickup to the drop-off. Who was bringing the secrets into the bookstore? This is where the investigation became a data analysis problem. The FBI now had the dates of 2 confirmed pickups, December 9th and January 4th. They meticulously went through all their surveillance photographs, identifying every single person who had visited Literarium Books in the days leading up to both signals. The list of regulars who had visited during both windows was small, only about 24 people. On January 29th, the bottle appeared again, and another pre-dawn pickup occurred. The FBI added this date to their matrix. When they cross-referenced the visitors from all 3 periods, the list narrowed dramatically to just 6 individuals. The process of elimination was quick. 3 were elderly women, regulars with no possible access to classified material. 1 was a local teenager. That left 2 persons of interest, a woman in her 40s and a man in his late 30s who always dressed in a business suit and carried a briefcase. The focus of the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world had narrowed from an entire metropolitan area down to 2 individuals. On March 14th, the man with the briefcase entered the bookstore. Agents photographed him arriving and departing. This time, they made the decision to follow him. A 2-car surveillance team tailed him from a discreet distance as he drove from Arlington to a modest house in Alexandria. That same evening, at 6:45, the Coca-Cola bottle appeared in the window of Literarium Books. The correlation was undeniable. The ripple effect of that one visit was an immediate signal. The man and the signal were inextricably linked. Within hours, motor vehicle records had given them a name, Walter Ashford. And within 24 hours, a background check had revealed the bombshell. Walter Ashford was a civilian clerk at the Department of Defense. He worked in a Pentagon office that processed and handled classified procurement documentation. He held a top-secret security clearance. He had access to the exact type of secrets that had been leaking for the past 3 years. They had found their source. Walter Ashford was the embodiment of the gray man theory of espionage. He was 41, unmarried, with no children, and no active social life. His routine was a study in monotonous predictability. Work, home, grocery store, dry cleaner. He was invisible, the perfect spy hiding in the open. A deeper financial analysis revealed the cracks in his mundane facade, a pattern of small but regular cash deposits that couldn't be explained by his government salary. On April 11, 1979, Ashford visited Literarium Books again, briefcase in hand. The FBI team, watching from the apartment across the street, knew this was the moment of decision. Hensley was faced with a critical choice. He could wait, let the signal be placed, and document the entire cycle one last time, hoping to finally get a clear look at the courier. Or he could move now, with the element of surprise, before the classified documents Ashford had just delivered could be collected and spirited away, before evidence could be destroyed. Waiting risked losing the stolen secrets forever. Acting now meant sacrificing the chance to catch the courier. Hensley made the call. They would move immediately. The autopsy was over. It was time to act on its findings. The final, decisive domino was about to be pushed. At 5:35 in the evening on April 11, 1979, the quiet world of Literarium Books was shattered. FBI agents, led by Robert Hensley, entered the shop. The owner, Ernest Caldwell, looked up from his counter, his expression of mild curiosity turning to pale-faced terror as Hensley identified himself and placed him under arrest for conspiracy to commit espionage. As Caldwell was being read his Miranda rights, agents searching a back storage closet found the package Walter Ashford had delivered just hours earlier. A manila folder containing photocopied documents stamped with the words "confidential" and "secret." They were technical specifications for satellite communication systems. The evidence was secured. Simultaneously, another team of agents descended on Walter Ashford's home. His initial reaction was to try and slam the door, a futile gesture of defiance against the inevitable. Inside his house, the search yielded the classic tools of the Cold War spy's trade. Concealed in a shoebox was a Minix camera, a miniature device famous for its use in covertly photographing documents. Alongside it were rolls of undeveloped film. In his desk, they found a notebook filled with coded entries, a meticulous ledger of his treason. The interrogations that followed revealed the stark contrast between the two men. Ernest Caldwell, the facilitator, crumbled almost immediately. After consulting with a lawyer, he gave a full confession. He explained how he had been recruited 3 years earlier by a smooth, well-dressed man known only as Michael. He was paid $500 a month in cash, a significant sum for a struggling small business owner, to allow his shop to be used as a dead drop. And he claimed he thought it was corporate espionage, willfully blinding himself to the far more serious reality. He laid out the entire mechanism. Ashford would drop off a package, Caldwell would place the half-full Coca-Cola bottle in the window, and an unknown courier would retrieve the package from the back of the store overnight using a key Michael had provided. Caldwell was the quintessential weak link, a man whose greed and moral apathy had made him a willing cog in a machine he chose not to understand. Walter Ashford, in contrast, was a hardened operative. He denied everything. The documents in the bookshop? He was just there to buy a book. Someone must be framing him. The Minox camera? A gift for his photography hobby. The coded notebook? Just personal jottings. Faced with overwhelming evidence, he invoked his right to remain silent and refused to cooperate further. He was a professional, trained to withstand pressure, admitting nothing, giving his handlers time to react. The FBI saw one last opportunity to widen their net. Using Caldwell's cooperation, they set a trap. The following evening, April 12th, Caldwell placed the Coca-Cola bottle in the window, just as he would have for a real pickup. Inside the darkened bookstore, 4 armed FBI agents lay in wait, concealed behind bookshelves and in storage closets ready to arrest the mysterious courier. The hours ticked by. The pre-dawn window when all the previous pickups had occurred came and went in absolute silence. No car slowed on the street. No figure entered the alley. No key turned in the lock. The courier never came. The failure of the trap was a testament to the discipline and security of the Soviet network. Had the courier spotted some subtle flaw in the setup? Was there a secondary confirmation signal that the FBI didn't know about? Or, more likely, had the arrest of a Pentagon clerk with a top-secret clearance triggered an immediate automatic shutdown protocol from Moscow Center? The network had sacrificed a valuable asset in Ashford and a useful location in the bookstore, but its other components, including the courier and the recruiter Michael, had melted back into the shadows, preserved to operate another day. The FBI had cut off a limb, but the body of the beast remained intact. The legal endgame was decisive. Faced with Caldwell's testimony and the mountain of physical evidence, Walter Ashford was found guilty on all counts. In January 1980, he was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. Ernest Caldwell, in exchange for his cooperation, received a lenient 5-year sentence. The case officially known as Operation Quiet Pastor was closed, a major counterintelligence victory, yet one haunted by the ghosts of those who got away. The story of the Coca-Cola bottle spy ring is more than just a relic of the Cold War. It is a timeless lesson about the nature of security and the character of vigilance. The universal lesson is that the most significant threats often wear a mask of utter normalcy. The danger was not a menacing figure in a trench coat. It was a quiet, bookish man in a cardigan and a gray, forgettable government clerk. The weapon was not a bomb or a gun. It was a consumer product so common, so quintessentially American, that it was functionally invisible. This case teaches us that security requires a special kind of awareness, a willingness to scrutinize the mundane, to question the routine, and to recognize that the most ordinary of objects can be co-opted for the most extraordinary of purposes. This principle has never been more relevant than it is today. The theater of conflict has shifted from the streets of Arlington to the digital corridors of cyberspace, but the underlying tradecraft remains eerily similar. Modern espionage still relies on exploiting the ordinary. The dead drop is no longer a bookstore, it's an encrypted file hidden in a public cloud server or a draft email saved in a shared account. The signal is not a Coke bottle, but a specific sequence of network pings, an unusual data packet, or a line of seemingly innocuous code activated at a specific time. The insider threat is no longer Walter Ashford with his Minox camera. It is an employee with privileged access and a USB drive, or a disgruntled contractor who knows the system's vulnerabilities. The fundamental principles of covert communication, compartmentalization, and hiding in plain sight are eternal. In the end, this entire, sprawling, multi-year investigation hinged on one man's refusal to accept coincidence. Michael Reeves saw something that didn't fit, an object slightly out of place, and he had the discipline and obsessive focus to pursue that anomaly until it unraveled an entire conspiracy. His actions remind us that vigilance is not a passive state of watchfulness. It is an active, intellectual process of pattern recognition. The Cold War may be over, its rival empires consigned to the pages of history, but the silent, shadowy struggle for information never ends. The threats to our security will continue to evolve, hiding themselves in our daily routines and our most trusted systems. Our greatest defense, then, is not merely technology or armament, but a mindset. It is the legacy of Operation Quiet Pastor and the lesson of the Coca-Cola bottle, the willingness to look closer, to question the ordinary, and to understand that sometimes the most profound secrets are whispered by the things we see every day but never truly notice.